We'll take it from here with a Fox News alert. The former Homeland Security Secretary telling lawmakers Russia clearly conducted cyber attacks to try to sway the U.S. election, and that Vladimir Putin clearly ordered it. Good morning. Welcome to Happening Now. I'm John Scott.
And I'm Julie Banderas. That is the focus of former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson's testimony as the House and Senate Intelligence Committee hold hearings on their investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The former secretary saying there is no doubt in his mind about Moscow's intention.
The Russian government, at the direction of Vladimir Putin himself, orchestrated cyber attacks on our nation for the purpose of influencing our election. That is a fact, plain and simple. Now the key question for the President and the Congress is, what are we going to do to protect the American people and their democracy from this kind of thing in the future? I'm pleased that this committee has undertaken this investigation. I welcome it. My sincere hope is that in bipartisan fashion, you find answers.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now live on Capitol Hill. Hi, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Julie. I'm over on the Senate side at the Senate Intelligence Committee hearing where we've heard witnesses this morning from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division as well as the Homeland Security Cybersecurity Division. And one of the main headlines this morning has focused on the summer of 2016 when they say Russian entities began scanning election databases in nearly 24 states. And this is really an indicator that the targeting was more widespread than previously reported.
As of right now, we have evidence of 21 states, or election-related systems in 21 states that were targeted.
But in no case were actual vote tallies altered in any way, shape, or form.
That is correct.
What we know publicly is that data was stolen or exfiltrated from at least 2 states, Illinois and Arizona, but there was a lot of frustration here on the Senate side this morning that the other 19 states have not been publicly identified by Homeland Security. The FBI witness testified that the goal of the Russians was simply to sow discord here in the United States and to undermine confidence in the U.S. electoral process. And when it came to the targeting of these state boards of elections and voter registration, it was all about planning for future opportunities.
I think, first of all, I think they took the data to understand what it consisted of, what's there, so that they can, in effect, better understand and plan accordingly. And when I say plan accordingly in regards to possibly impacting future elections and or targeting of particular individuals.
And within the last few minutes, we've had testimony and questions from Republican Senator Marco Rubio, who said he believes that the Russians targeted 21 states because simply targeting these entities, not even stealing the information, would have the effect of undermining the outcome of this election and leaving a cloud over whoever was the ultimate victor, Julie.
All right, Catherine Herridge, thank you very much. And one thing we can take away from this is clearly the investigation continues whether or not Russia had any play in the election. But again, still no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, correct?
That is correct. This is really focused this morning on the issue of the Russian campaign, which was described as being of a broader scale and more aggressive in nature than they'd seen in previous election cycles, and undermining confidence. The witnesses have testified that part of the goal from Moscow was to denigrate candidate Clinton and to help candidate Trump if they could in any way, but they did not change the voter tallies, and they have not testified that there is evidence of collusion between members of the Trump team and Moscow, Julie. That is correct.
Okay, Catherine Herridge, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Some new information this morning on a key GOP victory in another special election, one that turned into the most expensive House race in U.S. history. Republican Karen Handel came out on top, beating Democrat John Ossoff in yesterday's hotly contested election to represent the northern suburbs of Atlanta.
Thank you for believing in me.
Yes, right.
Tonight's victory It's for you, and it's for every single citizen in the 6th District. It's for every single person with a dream.
Jonathan Seri live for us in Atlanta right now. Jonathan?
Hi, John. More than $50 million, a record for a U.S. House race spent on these two campaigns, and it elevated the race to national status. The airwaves were saturated with campaign ads. At times, the ads could be quite negative, but now that this race has been settled, both candidates are calling for unity. Listen.
To the Jon Ossoff supporters, know that my commitments, they extend to every one of you as well. We may have some different beliefs, but we are part of one community, the community of the 6th District.
We showed them that we can still build coalitions of people who may not see eye to eye on everything, but rather than demonizing each other, we find common ground to move forward. And that's the only way this country will move forward.
Democrat Jon Ossoff's early campaign to make Trump furious attracted millions of dollars in campaign funding. When he pivoted to the center with a platform of creating jobs and cutting government waste, that funding helped him reach out to moderate Republicans and independents in the district. But Ossoff's funding also had some drawbacks. Listen to that.
He raised $23 million plus, but the vast majority came from outside the state of Georgia. And so she was able to say, not only does this guy not live in the 6th District, but his values are, quote, 3,000 miles away. And that resonated with a lot of the voters we talked to over the last few days of this race.
And take a look at this tweet from overnight. The president taking to Twitter saying, well, the special elections are over and those that want to make America great again are 5-0. All the fake news, all the money spent equals zero. Many people were looking at this Georgia election as an early referendum on the Trump administration. John?
Jonathan Seri there in Atlanta. Thank you, Jonathan.
Certainly.
Fox News weather alert. Now, the governor of Louisiana declaring a state of emergency as Tropical Storm Cindy bears down on the Gulf Coast. Cindy is expected to hit Louisiana later tonight, bringing in dangerous amounts of rainfall to states along the Gulf Coast. One Texas business owner, in fact, taking steps to prepare for the coming storm.
Getting ready for some wind. That's right now. It's just the wind and it's tidal surge. So we're trying to get everything off the ground. You just got to be prepared.
Casey Siegel is live at Holly Beach, Louisiana, right in the path of the storm. Hey there, Casey.
Julie, good to see you. Cindy, as you said, not expected to make landfall until the overnight hours. Right now, projections are around 1 a.m. To 6 a.m. Central Time, but still, we are already seeing and feeling her effects. I'm going to hop out of the way and let you take a live look at the Gulf of Mexico back here. This is Holly Beach, Louisiana, the Cajun Riviera, as it's known, not terribly far from the Texas border. You can see the waves out there, pretty choppy out in the Gulf as the storm makes its way to us. Storm surge, not so much a worry with this particular system, about 3 feet or so. Instead, it is the intense rain that has people worried. Folks all along the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way to the Florida Panhandle, are getting ready. Those sandbags are being put out, and residents in coastal areas of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama are moving some of their belongings to higher ground, something all too familiar with people who call this region home.
It's a part of life and people are a little bit relaxed. It's not hurricane storm status 4, 3 yet, 3 or 4, so they're kind of laying low.
We're just going to ride it out. We're going to see how everything goes. I think we'll be all right.
No evacuations to tell you about, but a state of emergency has been declared by the governors of Alabama and Louisiana. Much of this state is currently under flash flood watches, with forecasters predicting anywhere from 6 to 9 inches of rain, and some isolated areas could see more than a foot, the heaviest being in the south parts of Mississippi and Alabama. So you can see that this is being viewed by meteorologists and forecasters as mostly a flooding event. Cindy's winds not terribly strong, about 50 to 60 miles an hour or so. The National Hurricane Center not expecting her to strengthen before coming ashore tonight. Julie?
And you'll be there for it. Casey Siegel, thank you.
We will.
Fox News alert, and one suspect is in custody after a law enforcement officer was stabbed in the neck at the airport in Flint, Michigan. Bishop Airport is the name of it. The suspect apparently stabbed this off-duty officer and was taken into custody. The officer said to be in critical condition after being stabbed in the neck. No more information on what caused this incident. We'll get more information. But the Bishop Airport in Flint, which has some service to other commercial airports on the eastern part of the country, that airport, Bishop Airport, is closed for now as the investigation into the stabbing of this officer continues. A young American dies after being imprisoned in North Korea. Now the U.S. is considering its response. So what kind of response is warranted for the death of Otto Warmbier, a college student, after more than a year in captivity in North Korea? Also, a handful of Republicans writing a health care bill that will affect millions of Americans. Should it be taking place behind closed doors or out in the open? Senator John McCain will join us with his reaction to these issues and a whole lot more.
If you're frustrated by the lack of transparency in this process, I share your frustration. I share it wholeheartedly.
Satellites detecting activity at North Korean nuclear test sites as tensions with the U.S. remain very high over the death of Otto Warmbier. The president saying on Twitter, quote, "While I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know China tried." For more, I'm joined by Gordon Chang, Asia analyst and the author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Past tense in the president's tweet there, I know China tried. What do you make of that, Gordon?
Yeah, this, I think, is a little bit ominous because we have to read this in connection with his April 11th tweet in which he said, if China can't solve North Korea, the United States will do so alone. Now, if he still believes that, and in looking at yesterday's tweet saying China can't help, it means that there is going to be American action on North Korea, and presumably that would be soon.
Well, if there is action, I mean, I suppose it could run the gamut. Do you have any suspicions as to what might be in the works?
Well, they're thinking of taking the State Department's travel advisory on North Korea and turning it into a travel ban, which is something that we should do. But also, there are a lot of things that we should sanction, which we haven't. And more important, we should enforce the sanctions that are already in place, because we don't do that. And we don't allow, we don't impose costs on countries like China for violating UN and other sanctions.
Wait a minute.
So this,
we don't enforce the sanctions already in place?
Yeah, there's so many things that we know is going on, for instance, between China and North Korea, where we have Chinese banks laundering money for the North Koreans, and we do not impose any costs on those banks. We impose $300 million fines on European banks for busting the Iran sanctions, but here we have Chinese banks involved in much more complicit conduct and with regard to North Korea, and we're not doing anything. So, there's a lot of room for us to toughen enforcement.
Well, here you have a young man, an American college student, who is flat out murdered by the North Korean regime, and there doesn't, to this point, there doesn't seem to be any response. If Kim Jong-un can continue to do that, is there anything that stops him?
Yeah, and that's an important point, John, because we have given a lot of warnings to the North Koreans, but at the same time, we've essentially told them to ignore what we say because we never impose those costs for behavior which is dangerous not only to the United States, but also to the international community. So we've created this course of conduct, this dynamic, this expectation in the minds of the North Koreans. We need to stop that. And although it will be unpleasant, we need to actually impose those costs on North Korea and its enablers. And until we do that, we know what we're going to get. The North Koreans are going to counterfeit our currency. They're going to launch ballistic missiles. They'll test nuclear weapons. They'll use Americans as hostage. They'll do all sorts of things, John. And we've just been watching this.
Well, if they were to respond militarily, launch, say, an attack on South Korea in response to us tightening the screws, do you see that as a possibility?
Well, anything's possible on the part of the North Korean regime, but that's very unlikely because that would lead to the destruction of the regime. Kim Jong-un knows that. So they're not going to do something like that unless they're at a point where they have no other choice. And we're far from that position right now. I know the North Koreans will huff and puff. The Chinese will huff and puff. But nonetheless, if we don't do anything, we know the North Koreans within, let's say, 3 years, maybe even sooner than that, will be able to put a nuclear warhead on top of a ballistic missile that will be able to reach the lower 48 states. They've been making very fast progress. Not only are North Korean technicians smart on their own, they're getting a lot of help from Beijing at this point. And we see this. We know all about this. This is an open source. And yet, we don't impose costs either on the North Koreans or the Chinese. So, yeah, they're villains, but we permitted this.
And one gets the impression that, well, strategic patience, the era thereof, is over, and this administration might be inclined to do something. We'll see. We'll be watching it. Gordon Chang. Gordon, thank you.
Thanks, John.
She vanished more than 1 decade ago, and now new gruesome details emerging on the murder of a one-time beauty queen. Plus, election reflection. We are looking at the national implications of last night's Republican victory in Georgia and what it could mean for the 2018 midterms and the president's agenda. All this as Republicans on Capitol Hill continue to work to repeal and replace Obamacare.
The president clearly wants a bill that has heart in it. He believes that health care is something that is near and dear to so many families and individuals. He made it clear from the beginning that that was one of his priorities.
As moms, we send our kids out into the world full of hope.
And we don't want something like meningitis B getting in their way.
Meningococcal group B disease, or meningitis B, is real. Bexsero is a vaccine to help prevent meningitis B in 10 to 25-year-olds.
Even if meningitis B is uncommon, that's not a chance we're willing to take.
Meningitis B is different from the meningitis most teens were probably vaccinated against when younger.
We're getting the word out against meningitis B. Our teens are getting Bexsero.
Bexsero should not be given if you had a severe allergic reaction after a previous dose. Most common side effects are pain, redness or hardness at the injection site, muscle pain, fatigue, headache, nausea, and joint pain. Bexsero may not protect all individuals. Tell your healthcare professional if you're pregnant or if you've received any other meningitis B vaccines. Ask your healthcare professional about the risks and benefits of Bexsero and if vaccination with Bexsero is right for your teen.
Moms, we can't wait.
I would like to take a moment to address my fellow veterans because I know there are so many of you who have served your country honorably, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, or 32 years like myself. One of the benefits that we as a country give you as a veteran is your eligibility for a VA loan. Not 80%, but 100% the value of your home, and that's what you can get at New Day USA.
Go to newdayusa.com. or call 1-855-419-8330.
Why do we insist on 100% Alaskan whitefish? Why do we always hand dip in our famous batter, cook it to golden perfection, and serve it with fries for just $1.99? Because at Long John Silver's, we think you deserve more for $1.99.
You don't let anything keep you sidelined. That's why you drink Ensure with 9 grams of protein and 26 vitamins and minerals. For the strength and energy to get back to doing what you love. Ensure, always be you.
Georgia election fallout. How the result could impact the balance of power in D.C. Must-see insight and analysis on a powerful early prime lineup tonight.
There will always be problems to solve. Work to be done. And moments you don't want to miss. That's why we work tirelessly to deliver TV with incredible picture and sound. How you want it, when you want it. That's who we are. Spectrum.
People come to the Caribbean for its translucent waters. We took it over the top. Over the water villas. Over the water chapel. Over the water bar. Over the water restaurants. Over and above anything you could ever imagine. Sandals, the world's only 5-star luxury included resorts. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
Right now, new information on some crime stories we're watching. Gruesome new details in the murder of a former beauty queen who disappeared 12 years ago in Georgia. A grand jury indicting Bo Duke in the Tara Grinstead case. Duke is accused of tampering with evidence and burning Grinstead's body. A wild scene at an Indiana courthouse after a judge issued a warrant for Anthony Williams, and then Williams ran out of the courtroom. The judge chasing him while still wearing his black robe, but an officer caught up with Williams using a taser to end that chase. Closing arguments in the Baby Doe murder trial in Boston. Michael McCarthy stands accused of killing his girlfriend's daughter and then dumping the 2-year-old's body in Boston Harbor. His attorney saying McCarthy's girlfriend is really to blame, and she just pointed the finger at McCarthy to cover up her own role in her daughter's killing.
Right now, Belgium on edge and beefing up security after a failed terror attack at a Brussels train station. This was a scary scene where a man tried to blow up a nail bomb, shouting Allah Akbar before he was killed by a soldier.
He grabbed his suitcase while shouting and causing a partial explosion. Fortunately, nobody was hurt or injured. The suitcase immediately caught fire. The man has left his luggage burning and went down to the platform in pursuit of a station master. Meanwhile, the bag exploded a second time more violently. This bag contained nails and small gas bottles. The man then returned to the hall when he rushed to a soldier while shouting Allahu Akbar.
Greg Palcott is following the story live from London with us, and boy, what a close call, Greg.
Julie, here we go again. Police stage a raid early this morning in the capital of Belgium following that failed bombing attack right in the center of the city. The police action happened in the Molenbeek area of Brussels, apparently the home of the would-be bomber. It is a hotbed of terror activity. It has been a springboard for terror attacks. We've spent some time there in the past. This after that 36-year-old Moroccan man tried to set off that nail bomb in the main train station of the city last night. He apparently walked in with a group of people who were standing and looking at a departure arrival board, then apparently tried to trigger the bomb. That's when there were 2 small explosions and a fire. A soldier at the scene took absolutely no chances, and in their security parlance, the man was neutralized. Again, luckily no one was hurt, but that very busy train station was closed until this morning, causing a lot of disruption. And also, the Grand Place, right in the center of the city, was sealed off to tourists, also causing disruptions. Remember, last year we saw a string of deadly attacks in Brussels, and just in the last couple of days we've seen a deadly terror attack here in London and an attempted terror attack once again on the Champs-Elysees in Paris, France. Nervous times. Back to you, Julie.
All right, Greg Palcott, thank you.
The House and Senate Intelligence Committees holding hearings on Capitol Hill today. Lawmakers asking the former Homeland Security chief if future U.S. elections will be safe from Russian hacking.
Do you know which investment could be your best performer this year? Stocks, real estate, bonds? None of the above. It's silver. This year, it's already up over 12%, and many experts say silver is set to soar to new record highs.
I think silver's going to $200 an ounce.
Call now to get this free report, The Case for $200 Silver, and learn about silver's huge upside potential.
If I could only invest in one thing, it'd be silver. Silver is running out. It's in short supply. It is one of the greatest investments you could have right now.
Call Deer Capital for your free report, The Case for $200 Silver. See why silver could skyrocket 50% this year, why financial experts and investment banks are hoarding silver at today's low price, and how silver can help protect your savings from global turmoil. Call today and get up to $600 in free silver. This offer ends soon. Call 1-800-927-2400. 1-800-927-2400.
Since 1906, the Fuller Brush Company has been bringing our quality products direct to your door. Hi, I'm John Florell, the Fuller Brush Man, knocking on your screen to bring you the best products you've ever seen. Introducing Roto Sweep, The hard floor sweeper from the Fuller Brush Company. It's a rotating broom with its own dustpan that puts the power to clean up any mess right in the palm of your hand. Now you can safely clean tile, marble, linoleum, or any hardwood floors with no scuffing or scratching. Look, you wouldn't break out your big vacuum just to clean up this little mess. And why is it when you sweep by hand, you never get all the dirt into the pan? With no cords, bags, or batteries to recharge, as RotoSweep rolls across the floor, it gobbles up more and more. Whether it's wet or dry, you've got to give this a try. The secret are the triple rotating brushes that loosen, lift, and channel the dirt and debris right into the onboard dustpan. It comes with an easy empty door and a fold flat handle which allows you to clean under your furniture. And with RotoSweep's unique edge cleaning technology, it reaches in and under to clean baseboards, walls, and toe kicks. Plus, RotoSweep is lightweight. It's less than 2 pounds, and it makes no sounds. Broken glass on the floor? Not anymore. Look how RotoSweep gets every last shard. Now that's awesome. Cat food, dog food, kitty litter, pet hair. With RotoSweep, it's like it was never there. Call or go online to get the original RotoSweep for the factory direct price of just $19.99. Remember, the original RotoSweep is from the Fuller Brush Company, making quality products you've trusted since 1906. Call or go online right now, and we'll also include this handheld RotoSweep for carpets, upholstery, tabletops, and more. It's yours as a special bonus. Just pay a small fee. You get it all. A huge value for one low price. Call or go online to buyrotosweep.com to get yours.
For $69.95, you can get a pair of fashion frames at VisionWorks Yellow Tag clearance. Plus 25% off all lens upgrades. It's all about helping you be a better you. VisionWorks. Shop in store or online.
What's the story behind Green Mountain Coffee and Fair Trade? Let's take a flight to Colombia. This is Boris Calvo. Boris grows mind-blowing coffee. And because we pay him a fair price, he improves his farm and invests in his community to make even better coffee. All for a smoother tasting cup. Green Mountain Coffee.
New information on the national implications of GOP victories in recent special elections. White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders weighing in on last night's win in Georgia on Fox and Friends. Listen.
They thought the elections last night were going to be a referendum on this president, and once again he proved to never underestimate him and that the American people put him and other Republicans in place for a reason.
Joining us now, Congresswoman Cheri Bustos, a Democrat from Illinois and the co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. Thank you very much for taking the time, as it is a very busy week. Okay, so you just heard Sarah Huckabee Sanders there talking about the referendum on Donald Trump's presidency. I believe a lot of Republicans are rejoicing in that today. I want your reaction to both of the Republican wins in Georgia and South Carolina last night.
Well, you know, it depends on what perspective you're looking at it. But, you know, if you look just about a half a year ago, Representative Price won this Georgia district by 23 points. And last night, it was only a 4-point victory for the Republicans. So I see that as momentum from a Democratic perspective. You know, I'll draw this analogy. I'm a former college athlete, and you know, if you play a really tough team and you lose by a little bit, then there's always the next game, and maybe you win the next time, or maybe you'll come a little closer and then finally win. So, you know, we're moving the ball down the line. We weren't able to cross the get into the end zone the way we would have liked, but we're making progress. I don't feel discouraged by this. Obviously, I would have liked to have won from a party perspective, but I don't feel discouraged by this.
What message do you think this might send to the Democratic Party, as many had hoped that the Russia investigation involving President Trump's campaign might turn voters off from voting Republican?
Well, I know in a tough districts, and I happen to represent a district in northwestern Illinois that Donald Trump won.
Right.
But I won by 20 points. And when I go home on weekends, I do something we call Supermarket Saturday. So I'm literally walking the aisles and talking to grandpas when they're picking out tangerines and grandmas when they're picking out their oatmeal. But what I hear is that they want us to focus on jobs and the economy. I get almost no questions about Russia I get no recommendations that I support impeachment. Nothing like that. So what have I focused on since I first ran for office? I'm now in my third term. I focus on jobs in the economy nonstop. And what I share with my fellow Democrats is that's what we have to focus on. People want us to fight for their jobs, fight for a better wage. And all this other, the sideshows is not what people in districts like mine want us to focus on.
I think a lot of people would like the sideshows to go away, and so that they can actually focus on the issue. And one of the biggest issues right now in Washington, the next hurdle for Democrats as well, is going to be the fight over health care. And it, of course, is going to play a big role in the 2018 midterm elections. I want your take. Yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that there's going to be what he calls a discussion draft unveiled tomorrow on health care. Democratic senators, as you know, have been trying to stall the process, demanding public hearings on the bill, but those tactics unlikely to stop McConnell. Do you believe Democrats are running out of options when it comes to health care in that fight?
Well, I think we ought to focus on two things. Now, my background, my professional background before I came to Congress was I worked in health care. So both before, during, and after the Affordable Care Act passed. I'll be the first one to say it is a bill and it is a law that we needed some adjustments on. But let's focus on two areas, and that is the cost of prescription drugs, because they're too high for too many families, they're unaffordable for too many families, and let's look at the cost of copays and premiums and deductibles. I think if we could focus on those two things, come together as Democrats and Republicans, the country and our families would be the winners. And I wish we would divert this attention on whatever Mitch McConnell's going to throw out to the American public and to the Senate, and focus on those two areas. And I think people back home in our districts would be very pleased if we as Democrats and Republicans could come together on those two areas.
I think some Democrats and Republicans, I think you would agree, actually have come together in not necessarily supporting the GOP Senate health care bill. McConnell, as you know, can only lose 2 Republican senators anymore, and the Senate leaders will fail to repeal Obamacare, which means it's only going to take 3 Republican senators to come out against the bill, 2 of whom are Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Could it be that Democrats might actually try to unify with these Republicans and maybe form allies with them?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a good idea if we can form allies across the aisle. You know, that's what I try to do every single day of my career. I came from the private sector. I was a journalist, actually, for about 17 years before I worked in healthcare. But you know, if you work in the private sector and that's your entire background before you're coming to elected office in public service, you know that you cannot be successful without working with people who you might not see exactly eye to eye on, but there's usually a common denominator where you can start. And I hope that we see more of that. You know, we had a nice unifying message last week as a result of a terrible, terrible tragedy. And I hope that we could continue that. We'll see. Now, I play in the Congressional Women's Softball game, which is tonight. And, you know, so you know, just a really quick aside, but our team, we play the women's team. We play Democrats and Republicans, House members and senators. That's our team. We already play in bipartisan fashion. And our opponent, by the way, is the Women's Washington Press Corps.
Maybe they should build a baseball field on Capitol Hill. That's actually a genius idea.
I love it.
You should pitch that. No pun intended. All right, Congressman Cheri Bustos, thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
In 2016, the Russian government, at the direction of Vladimir Putin himself, orchestrated cyber attacks on our nation for the purpose of influencing our election. That is a fact, plain and simple. Now, the key question for the President and the Congress is, what are we going to do to protect the American people and their democracy from this kind of thing in the future?
So that's a big question from former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson testifying before the House Intelligence Committee on the safety of our elections. Just one of the many serious issues right now, including the sanctity of our vote, the secret drafting of a health care bill, and how to respond to North Korea after the death of a young American student who'd been imprisoned there for 17 months. Joining me now with some of his thoughts, Senator John McCain, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So Jeh Johnson says, what are we going to do about Russian meddling? Senator, what would be your answer?
Well, I would be examining a series of options in order to make sure that the North Koreans had a price to pay for this. I was very disappointed to hear of some parliamentary problem over in the House of Representatives. We passed a very strong bill by a vote of 98-2. I hope that we can get that issue resolved. Here's the facts. Facts are, since they tried to affect the outcome of our election, and I have seen no evidence that they were able to, but they tried, we have seen no action whatsoever. That sends the wrong message to people like Vladimir Putin. So we need to, I hope, take it up in the House, overwhelming vote, send it to the president, and I hope that he would sign it, but if he didn't, his veto would be overridden.
Do you remember during the 2012 election when President Obama sort of chided Mitt Romney for suggesting that the Russians might be our greatest geopolitical foe? It was as though the Russian problem had gone away. Have people on Capitol Hill rediscovered that the Russians are not our friends?
Well, I think that's part of it. There's some pretty graphic evidence that that's the case. And of course, for 8 years, there was no strategy, therefore no policy, therefore no way of responding to these constant attacks by the Russians, whether it be in the United States or any place in the world. So we need a strategy, we need a policy, and very frankly, I've been very disappointed that General Mattis, who I admire, and General McMaster, who I greatly admire, they haven't come forward with a strategy, and yet they're asking us, the Armed Services Committee, in marking up the bill that's going to be eventually signed by the President, has been for the last 53 years. I'm telling them I want a strategy. I'm not about to send more Americans into harm's way without a strategy for victory. What we have had for the last 8 years was a strategy for, quote, not losing. By the way, we're losing.
Let's talk about another big bill that is under wraps right now, the health care bill that's being drafted in the Senate behind closed doors. You have expressed frustration with that. Is this going to be another case like Obamacare, where Nancy Pelosi famously said we have to pass this bill before we can find out what's in it?
Well, I'm hopeful that they will report it out. I hope that we can have debate and discussion and amendments on the floor of the Senate. I do not like the way that this thing is being put together, and I think it's wrong, and I think the American people, by not knowing what's in our bill, are more and more swinging towards what is clearly a failed policy, and that is, of course, Obamacare. We need to come out with what we stand for, what we believe in, and how we're going to implement it. Well, that's the way democracies are supposed to work, and I'm very disappointed that we haven't. We still have time to do so, but I'm not prepared to just go to the floor and have a bunch of amendments and say, hey, we took care of what is basically, I think, 1/5 of America's GDP.
Senator, if we could have a couple more minutes of your time,
Sure.
I'd like to ask you on the other side of a break about the North Korean the student who died in North Korean after North Korean mistreatment, and get your thoughts on that. Senator
Sure.
John McCain back with us in just a moment.